Hello, everybody, and welcome to this dose of virtual vitamin Z. My name is Brad. I'm an education specialist for the Detroit Zoological Society. And today we're going to be talking about space. I know I'm in outer space right now, not this kind of space, but more the idea that all animals need space. Animals need space to find food, to seek shelter, to raise their young, just like humans, right? Humans, we need space too. So we're going to talk about animal needs, and this is the final installment of the animal needs virtual vitamin Z. So if you've been following along about food, water, shelter, and air, this is the final one. We're going to be talking about habitats. So animals need a space called a habitat, and in that habitat, we will find all of their other needs. So I'm going to go over some vocabulary words really quick. Okay, so the first word is needs. And that is something an animal must have to survive. And the other vocabulary word we're going to talk about today is habitat. So that's that space that animals live in. In the habitat is made of living and non-living things. So if we think of like a forest has living things like trees and plants, but it also has non-living things like soil and water. And in that habitat, they can find their different needs. So they might be food, water, shelter, and a place to raise their young. And the skills and concepts we're going to be working on today is ecological knowledge, because we're going to see how all animals need a habitat, but what that habitat looks like will be different for each animal. So let's watch this quick video, and let's think about some of these animals that we see, and let's think about our own homes that we live in, right? Our habitat. Are they similar or different? And habitats, we can think very small, we can think very big, right? So we can think of a forest, we can think even bigger to maybe some animals live on an entire continent, right? So all animals need a space to live, and that space is called a habitat. That's right, so they all need a habitat. And our first example we're gonna look at is Kisa. She's a female tiger that lives at the Detroit Zoo. And you can see she has some living things and non-living things in her habitat. So she's got some trees and some plants, but also non-living things like snow, rocks, water. So in her habitat are all these different needs that we are trying to meet. So a habitat is the natural environment that they live in. And at the zoo, we strive to replicate that so they can thrive at the Detroit Zoo. So Kisa, lots of space. Tigers have lots of space in the wild, and so do wolves. Here's another example. So wolves have a large home range, which is why when you come and visit the Detroit Zoo, you'll see the wolves' habitat is really large. And there's also lots of places for them to hide. So we provide those spaces for them to hide, give them the appropriate size spaces to live in, but not all animals have the same needs, right? So this turtle right here, this turtle would prefer to live in some water and have some places to hide. The wolves might not want to live in water. Or the butterflies, they have a really different habitat. They need space to fly, and they need plants to land on and to find food on, because butterflies drink nectar, so they need flowers for food. So animal habitats are going to look different, right? Some animals live in deserts, which is a spot that other animals can't live at all, and other animals live in coral reefs, another space, right? Wolves couldn't live in a coral reef, and forests. There's lots of different kinds of habitats, right? We can kind of think of all different places that animals might live. So let's look at some more examples of habitats at the zoo. So the blue morpho butterfly, we saw that a little bit. They have a space where they can fly, because butterflies need to fly. They have food there, so there's different flowers for them for nectar. There's actually water in there. If you go through the garden, there's water, and you will even see them over there. So that's some of the things that they need, which is different than, let's say, chimpanzees, right? Chimpanzees can't fly, so we don't necessarily need space for them to fly, but chimpanzees love to climb. They like their vertical spaces. So animals that climb, that's how they use their habitat, and it's important to provide that for them. Fish, we talked a little bit about, right? They live in the water, and that's how they get their oxygen is through the water. So the sunfish needs water to live in, which looks really different than this gaboon viper. So the gaboon viper his habitat is a little bit smaller, because gaboon vipers are sit and wait predators. They don't move around a lot like a wolf, or a wolf will travel a very large home range looking for food. Gaboon vipers, they kind of stay in one spot, and they like to just blend into their surroundings. So animals will have different needs, different habitats, even different temperatures, right, that they like to stay at. A good example of different temperatures, do you think the gaboon viper would be really happy to live here with the penguins? No, right? The gaboon viper wants a warmer space to live in, whereas penguins prefer colder climates. So the Gentoo penguins, they have a chilled environment to live in and a very large pool to swim in. So that's unique to them. And then amphibians. Amphibians need water to raise their young. So when you walk through the amphibian building, you'll see that there's water in these habitats, a space for them to lay their eggs and to grow up as tadpoles. So as we build habitats here at the zoo, we're always trying to replicate that natural habitat. So the Japanese giant salamander habitat was finished in 2018. And this is a good example of, we made that space larger. We gave them some caves for them to hide under, some rocks, some moving water that would actually replicate that moving stream that you would find them at in the wild. So now maybe you're thinking, how can I create a habitat for animals in my own backyard or my own neighborhood? So you can create a garden for wildlife either at home or at school or your local community center. So the things you're going to need, and this list is pretty long, is you're going to need some space. So you need any sort of space. Like I said, it could be your backyard, it could be at your school. You'll need some plants, some native plants, some food, and food can come in different shapes. It could be a bird feeder. It could be a certain plant that insects like to eat. You need some water for them. This could be a pond, a bird bath. You'll need to provide shelter. So it could be a toad abode, a house for a toad, or a bat house. And the skills and concepts we're working on today is humane education, empathy, reverence, and sustainability, because one of the things we're going to look for when we're building our garden for wildlife is to make it sustainable, because we want it to last. So how can you help people, animals, and the planet? So we can create this garden for wildlife. The National Wildlife Federation has a program where they will help give you some resources and tools to build a garden for wildlife. And in that garden, they're looking to hit these certain topics. So they want to provide food, water, cover, so shelter, and a place to raise their young. And they want it to be sustainable. So those are the 5 aspects that they're going for. And if we went over our animal needs, we've talked about food, water, shelter, air, and habitat. That's what we're making today. So on their website, they have lots of different resources that you can see. They give you different examples of the food that you could give or provide, the different types of water, and the different sustainable practices. So lots of resources on there to look at. If it feels a little overwhelming, they have a really cool feature where you can actually type in your zip code, and then it will tell you what plants are the food for the most species of butterflies and moths. So if we look at this, I searched for my zip code, and you can see this little icon here with the butterfly and the number next to it. So that means the sunflower, for example, has 77 butterfly and moth species that use it as a host plant for their caterpillars, because some caterpillars can only eat specific types of plants, but 77 types of butterflies and moths can eat sunflower. And then if you want a little bit more information, you can click on that, and then it pulls up this. So here's some different native species that you could potentially plant in your neighborhood, and here's the different species of butterflies and moths that it attracts. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, like, oh, I don't know, on their website, they have a lot of information. It's really, really helpful, and it helps make it pretty accessible to everybody. And they also have a checklist. So you can kind of look through their checklist and mark off the different things that you have to certify it as a garden for wildlife. And like I said, that garden for wildlife is really trying to provide those animal needs that we've talked about. So food, water, shelter, place to raise their young, and by creating a whole habitat, a place where these animals can really feel safe and thrive. So this checklist, super helpful. You can go through and make sure you have everything. And then if you ever need any inspiration, you can always come to the Detroit Zoo. We have lots of gardens here that are maintained by our volunteers, as well as pollinator gardens. This pollinator garden can be found at the back of the zoo by the giraffes. And you can see this garden here. Any inspiration, maybe get some ideas for what kind of plants you might want to put in it or how you'd want to set it up. Or you can always come and look at some of the animal habitats that we have here and see how the Detroit Zoo provides habitat spaces for the animals that call the zoo home. So my challenge for you guys, go out there, see if you can create a habitat in your own area for some animals that share that space with you. If you would like any more resources, you can always visit the Detroit Zoo's website, detroitzoo.org, and you can find more virtual vitamin Z there. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Bye.